Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to have so much fun because we're going to be talking about podcasting. Yay! And
Yay!
What we're really going to be talking about is why every single one of you who is listening or watching, if you don't already think that you should be a podcast guest, you should, because we want you to share your wisdom, to share your expertise, to share what it is that you do for a living and maybe make some money off of it. So please join me in welcoming my guest today, Christina Lenkowski. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Deb. I'm so excited to be here, be in front of your audience and talking about something that I'm really passionate about. It's a little meta to be on a podcast talking about podcasting, but I think it's super, super important to get out there about why it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And it's funny because so many people who listen to podcasts, and we'll talk about this obviously in great detail, think, oh, that's cool, but I could never do that. Or more importantly, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And we're really going to talk about that. But before we do, let me tell people a little bit about you. So Christina Lenkowski is a forward-thinking publicity strategist, an educator for entrepreneurs, speakers, and authors looking to expand their credibility and go from best kept secret to go-to expert in their industries through being a guest on other people's podcasts. In 2019, after 13 years working in the PR realm, Christina discovered what being a guest on podcasts did for her online-based business. Since then, she's dedicated her work to helping other business owners, particularly women, and we're going to really talk about a lot about that, see the same kind of results. Christina lives in Boise, Idaho with her husband and daughter. So again, Christina, welcome.
Thank you. Such an intro there.
I know. It's always fun when we hear our own intros read.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's almost always, ooh, that sounds like it's hey,
I sound legit.
Yeah. And so it's always fun. But we might talk about getting those bios written as part of this process. But what I always like to start with is asking my guests how they got to where they are today. So, I mentioned in the bio that you were in PR and you moved on. How is it that you discovered that this was your passion in life?
Yeah, so it's actually really funny. When I was growing up, my mom was the director of a big nonprofit in Oregon, which is where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And she always said to me multiple times, like, I think you're going to be in PR. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Mother, yes. I'm a journalist. Like, yes. I like my degrees in journalism. Like I was all sure that was going to be what I did. And, was, the editor of the student paper, right. And, high school and college, everything like that. And then after graduation, I went and traveled for a little over a year and I came back home and I was offered 2 jobs, lucky enough to be offered 2 jobs at the same time. And one was as a copy editor for a paper in Oregon. And another one was to work on the publicity team of a company in Portland.
Okay.
And so I kind of hemmed and hawed about it. And ultimately it came down to, I'm an extrovert. Like I am someone that likes to talk, be around people, etc. And this newspaper position was a copy editor position that I was going to be just by myself at night, editing the papers,
like little
doing
red
all that. I was like, yeah. And I was like 23 and, everything like that. And I was like, I don't think, and it was like, yeah, you'll work 5 to 11 Monday through Saturday or whatever. And I was like, no, or I had this opportunity to work for this comics company in their publicity department. And so or PR department. And so I started doing that. And I found that it was just my mom was right. Turns out, that it was a really good mix for me of being able to write, and then also being able to be social and go to, work events and do all this stuff. So over my 13 years or so working at agencies, I worked with the likes of Cirque du Soleil and huge companies down to small, like mom and pop type things. But my area of expertise was tourism PR. So that was what I really focused on and what I was
and being
really
in your
at.
part of the world is a great place for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from the Northwest, and my mom, the nonprofit I mentioned, was all about agritourism.
Oh, okay.
So I had grown up kind of in that environment as well. And so, I was doing this tourism PR. I had my daughter about 6 years ago, and after I had my daughter, I was like, all right, I'm done being a senior account exec. Like, I don't want to be working like this anymore. I want to be able to be with my kid as well, but I still want to work. Right? Like, I don't want to be completely done with work. I enjoyed it. So I went off on my own and, did consulting for a year or two. And then I know this is really long and roundabout, but I swear it gets to what we're doing. And so I launched a course, like I launched a business, and then I did an online course about tourism PR. And even though I had worked in the PR world for a pretty long time at that point, when I launched my online course, I did no publicity. I did exactly what the gurus, quote unquote, were saying to do, which was ads and to be on social media a bunch.
Right.
And so those were the two things that I did. And it was an absolute flop. Like, it was
nobody paid you money.
I had like 5 people did, but like for all the money that I put in for ads and all this type of thing, I was just like, what? Like what is happening? And so the next time I launched it, I did publicity. I started to guest on podcasts, which were, at that point, this was a couple of years ago, and they weren't even anywhere near as big as they are now. But I started getting on podcasts, and the difference that I saw was just amazing. Like, people seeking me out, people trying to find me and find my product, as opposed to me feeling like I was chasing all the time. And so from there, this was like in 2018 when I was going through all this, 2018, 2019, and then 2020 hit, and tourism obviously went.
Tourism went
bye-bye. Tourism went bye-bye, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall from the get-go. And so I did a lot of free stuff for people, free resources for them. But at that point, I had already been kind of thinking about transitioning into just doing the podcast work. And so it was the perfect time for me to go and do that. So in early 2020, I turned all my attention towards getting myself and clients booked on podcasts. And that's where we are today.
Right. I love it. And it's always fascinating to me to hear someone's backstory, because, nobody just went, I want to be doing this, even if they were, in their family business or things like that. And it is very interesting, because it made us who we are and gave us that foundation for all of that. And so let's just kind of dive right in. One of the things, I talked about it in the intro, was people think, wow, okay. First of all, people think it's hard. It's pretty hard. So we're going to talk about that. But the big thing is, people say, why would anybody care? So why do people, why should we be saying, hey, people do care. We want you to get your message out there. How do you talk to people about that?
Well, I think the biggest thing to remember is, twofold. One is that everyone has a story.
Right.
Every single person has a story. Like, you just heard my story, which isn't even all of it, but how I got to where I am today. And there's some people that really, really resonate with that. So even though I do this work, there might be someone else that does similar work to what I do, but they're going to have a completely different story than I do. And I find that that's where a huge amount of value comes in for my clients, is people resonate with their stories. And we talk about that when we start pitching topic ideas and we start doing this stuff. I want to hear their story. I want to hear how they got to where they were, because there's usually going to be someone that's going to listen, that's going to hear that story and go, that's me. And that know, like, and trust factor has been upped dramatically. The other thing that I always like to kind of say about this is, here's the thing. When you go on a podcast, you're not you don't worry about, it's not you're not selling.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling a story and you're adding value.
And you shouldn't sell.
You shouldn't sell. So you don't need to be worried like you're going to go on there and have to be selling or something like that. That's not the issue. The thing that we have and the thing that we say in our business is service over self-promotion. And that is always how you should be looking at interviews. What value can you bring? What value can your story bring? What value can your expertise bring? What is it that people are going to learn from you? Not what are they going to buy from you?
Right.
And I think that that's a really important distinction for people to understand why they should be a guest and why people would want to listen to them.
Right. And I've been doing this for 10 years and have, over 700 programs. The times when people come on and want to sell from a host's perspective are painful. Because I always give my guests the opportunity to promote what they do, because that is part of the reason why they're on. But when they come on and think that, the entire thing is, I'm going to tell you what I do and why you should hire me and yada, 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 that gets old after about maybe 5 minutes. And because I want to know that backstory. I interviewed somebody earlier this month who is a violin maker. And it was funny because when he was first pitched, it was kind of like, okay. And then I thought, wait a minute, this sounds really cool. And it was one of the coolest interviews I have done in a long time. But part of it wasn't just about how he made violins, and he custom makes them. So, we didn't talk price, but I'm guessing this was not, this is not your sixth grader starting out is not going to do this. But he also talked about the challenges of being a business owner, especially when he's having to do invoicing and he's having to go to networking and he's not able to be working with the wood and the strings and all of that. And so that also made that very interesting to hopefully my listeners and viewers to say, okay, we can understand from that perspective, what he's gone through.
Yeah, there's interesting parallels. All businesses have certain things that are going to be similar, and there's people out there that were listening to your show that make custom products. They maybe don't make violins, but they make something. And so they're going to find an incredible amount of value in what he has to say, and they're going to resonate with him. And I think that that's what's so important, is that those shared experiences that people have. That's where I get DMs from people that heard me on an interview or, an email from someone, is because they really resonated with something that I said.
Right. And sometimes it's funny that what they pick up on is like, oh, I don't even remember talking about that. But it is, it's one of those things where you never know where that little touch point is going to be. And that's what I tell people, with all of their communications is don't just get stuck on that one thing. You mentioned the know, like, trust factor. That comes about when we get to this is going to sound funny, when we get to know people, but we get to know them through seeing, their posts on social media, all of those various things. And then thinking, oh my gosh, Christina is somebody that I really want to contact, and some of it is just, they go, oh, I'm from Idaho. So, I want to work with somebody local. Many times it's, I want to support a women business owner, all of these various things. So you never quite know what's going to resonate with somebody. In my LinkedIn profile, my headline, of course, has all the stuff it's supposed to have, but it also says college sports fan. I think maybe it's lover, but college sports. And that is
enthusiast.
And it's as unprofessional as it comes, right? Most of the time we would get, don't put that there. I've had several people who told me they connected just because of that, and so again, you never know where that little touch point will be. And of course, the cool thing.
I was just going to say, I actually find that funny because I'm the opposite. Like if someone has no personal anything you're on there, like, ew. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Like I want to connect with them on some level. And so I find that funny that people will say the opposite thing, but that just goes to show you, like, people resonate with different things.
And it really is funny that, they do. And of course, a podcast, when we're hearing someone's voice, That is very
Mhm.
different. And, and then those that are like mine that are also video, that makes it even more so, because we
Mhm.
see the person and we're able to go, okay, wow, they're working from home just like I'm working from home.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, but the point is you're talking to them like you're talking to them, like you're
Right.
having a cup of coffee with them, things like that. And we all know that the second you divert into, you need to buy my product or my service, we we completely zone out.
Yes, exactly.
So if we've convinced people, okay, they really do have something that people want to hear about, how
Mhm.
can they get started, right now?
I think that kind of a couple ways that I would say to get started, first and foremost, would be to ask your audience,
Mhm.
wherever that is, social
Mhm.
media, e-newsletter, both, whatever,
Mhm.
what podcast they're currently listening
Okay.
to. And I actually think that that's a great way to kind of
Okay.
gauge the level
Mhm.
that people are kind of at, where they're
Mhm.
hanging at. You're probably, you're going to get
Mhm.
some that have nothing to do with what you
Right.
do.
Mhm.
Obviously, people listen to all different kinds of things.
Mhm.
Like, I listen to a lot of entrepreneurship podcasts, but I
Mhm.
also listen to a bunch of true crime podcasts, right? So
Yeah.
like that, might not help another
Mhm.
entrepreneur, but I also might be like, hey, you should check out West Fork. It's awesome.
Mhm. Mhm.
So like, you're going to get responses like that, which are all
Mhm.
great. But I think that that's a really great, easy way to kind of even
Mhm.
just gauge where people are and kind of
Mhm.
where they're getting started. The other thing that I would do is from there, start following some people on social media that
Mhm.
have shows that
Mhm.
your audience is interested in.
Mhm.
And whether that's because you heard from them or
Mhm.
whether that's because that that's a show that
Mhm.
people are listening to. Because really the biggest thing, and I can't stress this enough, is like, you only want to be on shows that your audience is in,
Right. And
shows that
there's
they are listening
millions of
to.
shows, folks. This is not a complicated
There's a lot of
process.
shows. There's a lot of shows. So that's not a complicated process. But my point being, I don't want you to just be getting on any show you
Right.
can
Mhm.
or an easy. I mean, you
Mhm.
can get on any shows you want,
Mhm.
but it's a matter of your time,
Mhm.
right? Like, so if you're okay with spending your time going on shows that are fun to do, but they
Mhm.
aren't maybe necessarily your right audience, that's
Mhm.
fine. But for like my clients and for things like that, I want to make
Mhm.
sure that we're spending their time wisely.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we're getting on shows that strategically are full of their ideal
Mhm.
audience members. Do not get hung up on the size of
Right.
the show. Do not get hung up on things like that. The thing that I really, really want, anyone that's listening right now to focus on is the quality of the audience.
Mhm.
And again, if they're full of that ideal customer, I know I've said it like 100
Mhm.
times, but it's really, really important
Mhm.
because I would rather, no doubt about it, no question, get on a show with 100
Mhm.
downloads, but they're my exact
Right.
audience,
Mhm.
than a show with 10,000
Mhm.
downloads that has not, that
Mhm.
they don't care at all what I
Right.
have to say.
Right.
And so I think that that's super important for people to kind of get reiterated,
Mhm.
is the size does not
Mhm.
matter. It's
Right.
that quality.
Mhm. And we've all seen the mismatches, especially like with advertising,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm watching a TV program and maybe it's Law and Order, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's an ad that comes on for children's cereal, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you know,
Yeah.
so, yeah, and we do.
Yeah.
There's that, and that disconnect is a negative. We think about
Yes.
them and we're like, well, this didn't make sense for them to be there. And and it
Yeah.
is, when you're thinking about being on programs, you do have to put thought into it, as you were saying. I had
Mm-hmm.
a woman pitch to me one time who wrote a book on infertility. And
Mm-hmm.
she pitched, and and I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting, but it is a business program. So let's continue the
Yeah.
conversation. And so she came back and she said, she quit her job and has made it her job now to promote the book and all of those various things, and now she's doing a series and all sorts of things, and she and I have become friends. But it was just kind of that extra little, okay, how can this be pertinent to my audience? Because as the host, That's what I care about. I don't want somebody sending me a message afterwards and saying that made
Yeah.
no sense. You know, and
I was
so,
actually going to say, you're a very nice host. Most hosts would not write someone back.
Usually I do, you know, every once in a while.
in.
Now, sometimes
Guys,
I will just
Deb
flat
is
out
the
say,
exception.
this doesn't match, you know, and, you know,
Deb
and
is
I'll
the
say,
exception, not the rule.
Yeah. You know, there have been a couple of times where I've said, I'm sorry, I don't see how this can benefit my listeners. You might check out XYZ. You know, I don't want to just, you know, not do anything, but, you know, but yeah, every once in a while, and sometimes it is just a matter of that pitch. And we're going to talk about that too, is, you know, making sure that it is a good fit for my audience so that I pay attention.
Yep. And that's where that service over self-promotion comes in.
Right.
You think about the value that you bring to their audience.
Right.
And this is a really important distinction because like you kind of mentioned, and I'm sure you've gotten pitches like this before, but people that kind of say, here's everything that I'm an expert in. And that's why you should have me on the show, as opposed to here are the ways that I can bring value to your audience. And that is a really big distinction. And it's going to make a host much more interested in having you on the show if, again, they know that the audience is who you're trying to bring value to.
Right. You know, and I get on average 5 pitches a week, probably at least. So I always tell people, you got to make it easy for me. I'm not going to go to a website. I'm probably not even going to open a one sheet. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But that initial email has got to catch my attention within the first paragraph, or I don't read it. You know, and so, you know, we have to make things simple for the people because, you know, I had one time who, you know, it was pitched to me by a publicity firm. He sounded pretty interesting, but, you know, when I said, okay, and I always ask for speaking topics because I want to make sure that I'm covering what the guest wants to cover.
Sure. Yeah.
And the response I got back was, research it yourself. That's your job.
No.
And
and that's what the publicity firm had written.
And it's so funny. I could tell when my editor or my producer got the same email, because I get this text, you've got to be kidding me. And I thought, okay, let's put the nice hat on again and use this as a learning example. And so I responded to her and I said, thank you, but I don't have time to do that. You know, and same thing goes for the people who say, you know, Christina could talk about a variety of subjects.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm still in shock. I know
she did.
Over the
you know,
fact
and so she
wow.
did, you know, that person came back and she, you know, she clarified and she said, okay, guest A can talk about yada, yada, yada. So again, sounded good, did the interview. He and I hit it off during the program well enough that afterwards I said, can I talk to you about something? And he said, sure. And I said, I don't normally do this, but you are a good speaker with a great message. I said, have you been frustrated with the number of bookings that you've gotten? We talk about, you better be a good speaker too, right? And you know, how many you have received? And he said, yeah. He said, I've been kind of frustrated. And I said, I'm going to tell you why. And he was not happy. And
why would he be?
I know,
Absolutely,
you know, and I don't care if he paid them $10 or $10,000. No, you know, and so, but yeah, you know, we tell people, keep it simple, stupid, whatever adjective you want to use in there, you know, make it easy for the host, because we've, you know, and not only are we a host of a podcast, we probably do 2 or 3 or 50 other things. So the simpler you can make it for me to look at it and go, okay, Kim, we need to get this person booked. You know, the quicker it's going to be.
I love that. That's a really good point you made there, in the sense of, because I see this happen too. Don't just, again, say the different, or we're very clear on this, I guess, but don't say the different topic ideas, or not different topic ideas, the different areas that someone can speak on.
I can talk about entrepreneurship, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times people think they're making that, they think they're making it easier for the host by saying, these are the things that I can talk about. You tell me which one you want to focus on, and that's what we'll focus on. But in reality, what's a lot easier for the host is for you to give them specific, and that's like what we do. 2 to 3 specific,
right,
with like a little like a topic and then a couple sentences after of topic ideas, so that and I 99.9 times out of 100 they will say, I want one of those topic ideas.
Yeah.
Very rarely are they like, I have something else I want to talk about. Now that doesn't mean we can't tweak it, of course.
Right.
Like if they want to kind of talk about something different a little bit, or hone in on it or something, that's fine. But no, 100% what you just said is true. Is like, you need to be making the job easier, and the way you make the job easier is give them every bit of information that they need, so that they can get to yes.
Right.
Another thing that you said that I wanted to just point out too is, like, you mentioned the one sheet and things like that. You guys who are listening right now, do not get hung up on your one sheet. I cannot tell you how many people I'll talk to them about pitching. They're like, well, I'd love to start pitching, but I have to get my one sheet done, and stuff like that. And I'm just like, no,
I don't open many of them.
You don't. You don't need to do that. Like, there are some shows that they really like to have one. That's fine. It's great to have one in your back pocket. Don't get me wrong. We create it for our clients. I think that it's a great asset to have, because hosts sometimes will ask for it. But do not let that be what stops you from starting pitching. Like Deb said, the quality of your pitch is what gets you booked on a show. It doesn't, your one sheet isn't what does it. It's not, that's it, that ain't it. So be focusing on that email. Look, I live in Boise, Idaho. The people that pitch for me live like these little towns, whatever. And we've got our clients booked on top shows, and that's just the quality of our pitch. That's not because of a one sheet. That's not because of anything else. It's because we took the time to research. We took the time to come up with valuable topics for their audience, and we sent the pitch.
Right. And the content that's on the one sheet should actually be what you're putting in the email.
Most of it's going to be there. Yeah, exactly.
And now, I will typically, if somebody has sent me a one sheet, like I said, I often don't open them when I'm considering, just because there's so many. I can't.
Well, and you also don't know them.
Right.
If you don't know, why would you open an attachment from someone you don't?
You never know what cootie it might have.
Yeah.
But I typically, if they've sent them, when I'm actually doing the interview, I will open it. That's part of my research.
That's why I think they're great to have.
Yeah, especially if they say, here's some sample questions, some things like that. Oh yeah, that's great. And so I'll open those. But that does kind of bring up, as the host. Now, every host does it differently. I do quite a bit of research on my guests. So if they're an author, I read the book. Last week, I had 3 books I had to read. Ooh, that was a brutal week. But I read the book. I'm not going to ask them questions about it if I haven't read the book. Now, I'm not going to say on page 96, I can at least say, oh my gosh, I remember where you talked about that. Things like that. But I also go to their websites. I go to their social media, all of those things.
Like
and
Christina,
sometimes,
you have all the things.
And sometimes I do find something else that I want to talk about. And now typically I will ask in advance, as we're doing the kind of pre-show chit chat, and I'll say, hey, I noticed that you talked about founding a nonprofit. I'd really like to maybe include that in the conversation. And, very rarely have I had people say, I don't want to cover that. Usually that happens more if I say, like you and I, we're going to be talking about, women doing podcasts. So, I talk with a lot of people who are supporting women business owners. And I say, would you be comfortable talking about, women in other countries? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. My goal as the host, I am not Geraldo. This is not a gotcha type of program. I know I just dated myself, right?
No, I loved it.
I don't want to do gotcha questions where they say I can't answer that, because that's embarrassing for everybody. And if
Most
it's an attorney, an attorney, financial person, there are things they can and cannot talk about. So I just make sure that we're on the same page before we ever start.
Yep. Yes.
And so let's talk about the pitch. We've kind of talked a little bit about it, but why, how in the heck does somebody go about, especially getting somebody's attention in this day and age?
Research. And I truly mean that. It's people tend to think PR publicity is very sexy, right? Like it's this very sexy gig, that oh, you get people, you must have a Rolodex of contacts. You get people, I don't know why people still use the term Rolodex. It makes me laugh.
I know. Yes, again, we're dating ourselves.
No, I know. They'll be like, you have a Rolodex. I'm like, no, I don't. I have a computer. But yes, we have these contacts and stuff like that. And people kind of think that's so whatever. Most of our job is research. And that is the real truth of the matter. And so how you set yourself apart is to do that work.
Right.
There are people out there that do pitching and they use what we like to call the spray and pray method. They send out,
that's why I get pitches. 5 a week.
Yes. I'm sure, I have no doubt. And they're cookie cutter pitches. There's nothing to them. Sometimes they don't even put their name in there. They're just sending out a bunch of
Or they
stuff.
put the wrong name. I love those.
Oh, the wrong. That's a special treat. That's an extra special treat when that happens. And that's the type of stuff that we do not do at Publicity by Christina. So we're set up a little differently than a lot of agencies that might also do podcast pitching. And the reason for that is we actually have a guarantee. So
I saw that on your website. You guarantee placement.
Yes,
Holy schmoly.
We do. And that's because I'm going to use some language here, but I worked in PR agencies for a long time and it drove me absolutely bonkers that we could never give any kind of guarantee to our clients, anything.
Right. Yeah. And let's be honest, that's what a lot of PR is. It's the praying that somebody picks it up.
Yes, exactly. And I get that. I understand that. Like I've been in that world. I get it. But for me, as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur now, like I ain't here for that bullshit. Like for lack of my language, like I need like some guarantees if I'm going to be dropping this money.
Right.
And so for me, it was really important to include a guarantee. Of course, when someone starts to work with us, I can't say where. Right. We're going to get them featured. Yeah.
I'm not going to get you on, X, I had a client one time want me to guarantee that I could get her on Oprah. And I said, you ain't paying me enough money.
We're not a client. That's what's funny is that you said that because I hop on a call with anyone before they can become a client of Publicity by Christina.
You get to know them. And make sure it's a good fit.
Yeah. I want to know them. I want to make sure I think they're going to be a good podcast guest. B, I want to see what they're kind of things are. But if people say like, I want to be on Oprah, I want to be on Joe Rogan, I'm like, okay, like, it's not that you can't do those things. It's just a matter of like, that's not
as we say here in the South. Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of an immediate red flag for me when that's something that someone like that's what their goal is like right now to do. Again, that doesn't mean I can't be your goal long term.
Oh yeah, but we
like,
tell people have your BHAGs.
Yeah, I think it's great. I totally forgot what I was
how you pitch people and how you go about personalizing it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is instead of sending out these, and this is the reason that we do this, instead of saying, okay, we're going to send 50 pitches a month, right? What we do is we say we're going to guarantee 8 or 12 pitches or 12 bookings, over our 6-month contract. Right.
And that's very reasonable.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very reasonable amount. It's something that we can do, and because we don't use that spray and pray method, we're sending out less pitches, but we have a much higher acceptance rate because we've done the research. Right. We're spending the time on each of those pitches to make sure that it's going to bring value to that audience. And that's how we've been able to get our clients booked on top shows from cold pitches where we don't have any connection, but we know, or any personal connection, but we know that they speak about XYZ or that they haven't spoken about XYZ, but we think that it would be a good fit for them. And so that's truly how you stand out is by researching, knowing that show. And I'm not saying you spend hours on it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, listen to 15 minutes of the show, look at some of the past episodes that they've done, see where you could bring value.
Right. And from a host's perspective, that's just fantastic. And then if you can stroke our egos a bit, there's that. When I have somebody say, I just listened to your, if they say, I just listened to your interview with Betty Boop.
Yes.
And I thought, and then if they actually say something from that, it was a great topic that she brought up.
Are you telling all our trade secrets? Are you telling all our trade secrets, Deb?
Yeah.
No,
but
that is
we're going to talk about why people go, oh my God, that's so much work, because that, and it is a lot of work, but you want to listen to the podcast, and especially like mine is an hour. I'm not saying listen to 4 or 5, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But listen to it, first of all, because you want to make sure that it's just a good fit from how they do the program.
Right.
With the, like, I'm a very chatty host, and it's a lot of give and take and things like that. But yeah, if somebody tells me I've listened to your podcast and then they're specific about it, that's even better. But, but when you get booked, listen, make sure, because that's where you really want to know this is how they do things. And if you're using this truly as a great business tool, you should be doing that. You should be listening to a little bit, a lot, you might really like them. And so you're going to listen to a bunch, but you should go into it knowing how they operate.
Yes. And particularly, like you said, as a guest, that's one thing we recommend for our clients to do. I do that before I'm on a show. Listen to one of Deb's episodes before I hopped on here, because it's just it's twofold for me. It gets my energy up. I'm excited to be a guest on the show. I've just listened to one. I'm like, yay, all right, we're good here. And then secondarily, you are going to get even a reminder if you've already listened or not, but an idea of that structure, like you said. So like, okay, I know I'm going to come on. Deb's going to ask, me kind of how my journey started or my story. And then at the end, she's going to ask me for my one final thought, things like that. Like I'll kind of have that general setup there. So that I just kind of have that in my head before we get started.
Right. And this is just like a speaker would prepare before going on stage. They're going to research who their audience is. They're going to know what the format is, all those various things. And, because it comes back to what you were saying, it's about giving the best content for the audience. And
that's one thing too, like, don't worry about pitching the same idea to multiple hosts, because it's going to be different audiences each time. So that's kind of something I'll be like, well, I don't have time to come up with different ideas every time. You don't have to be. What I typically do when we start working with a client or like for our Black Friday special, I'm going to talk about later, when we create the pitch templates, we're going to come up with like 3 to 4 solid topic ideas that are going to be in that pitch template. And then we're only pitching them probably 2 of those, like based on what
again,
makes
it needs to be keep
audience.
It simple for the host.
Keep it simple. We usually pitch on 2, what we think is going to be the best the best fit. And then of course we're personalizing up at the top, like Deb said, because we have listened, we've researched, some kind of connection, typically between them and our client. So like, hey, Deb, you had so-and-so on. I really think, I love what they had to say about XYZ. My client so-and-so also feels this way about da-da-da-da-da. And here's some of the reasons why, blah, 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 blah.
And my little ego goes,
do you like that description? Do you like that description? Blah, 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 blah. But I think that that's important to note is like what you really need is that template. And then you customize it from there. You shouldn't be reinventing the wheel every single time.
Right.
So kind of on average, I'd say what we spend per pitch is about 30 minutes. And I really definitely think that you could get to that. And so that's, if you have the pitch template already created, stuff like that, you've already listened to maybe a little bit of the episode, then you're just having to put in some personalization there and send it off. And then perhaps most importantly, send your follow-up a couple weeks later. And that's where a lot of people drop the ball. And that's what I really recommend you even put in your, how I pitch, I do pitch days for our clients. So that's how I prefer to pitch instead of like a few hours a week. What I'll do is set aside one whole day a month and just pitch that client a bunch. I call them pitch sprints. So for me, that works really, really well because I'll do a bunch of pitching and then I put a reminder in my phone or in my calendar for 2 weeks later. And that's when I do all my follow-up. And so it all is kind of on the same schedule. And for me, that works really, really well for just staying on track and not forgetting to do the follow-up.
Right. And it really is amazing how many follow-ups we get because it's very few. And even when somebody pitches now, it's funny. We kind of have a different way to go about stuff. And part of that is because we've been doing this a long time. Like I said, we get pitched a lot. And and there are certain firms that know, hey, we can contact Deb with these people. So we have that list, that's kind of our list of people I know get priority, or a repeat guest. And then we use the others to kind of fill in. But we get so much that we're often months out. Somebody could pitch somebody to us and we're not going to get them on the schedule for 3 or 4 months. Right. I have a reply that goes to everybody. Now it's a cut and paste reply that I will personalize depending on what they put in there. But basically it says, hi, Christina, thanks for the information about Bob. Bob sounds like a great guest. However, we have enough on our schedule right now to take us through the end of the year. We will put you on the list and be in contact, but it might not be for several months. So we're kind of telling them that. I had somebody last week,
by the way.
Yeah. I had somebody last week that followed up 4 times. Did you get my note? Did you get my note?
Wait, in the week?
Did you get my note? Oh, yeah. And the 4th time I said, as I have told you, and it's, and so, but what it looked like to me was it was automated. And, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to double check those things, because like I said, the 4th time I'm getting annoyed, and it doesn't matter if their guest is the greatest thing the greatest person who developed sliced bread. I'm not going to talk to them because their PR person annoyed me. And so, it's just,
I'm laughing because it's true. It's 100% true. Yeah.
And if you're working with a firm, it's very important for you to know what their process is. I, like I said, I've sometimes talked with my guests and said, hey, do you know, this is what happens? Because sometimes it's good. I mean, there have been times where I've said, I have to tell you, your firm got you moved to the top of the list because they did X, Y, Z. And some things like that. But yeah, you need to know what is happening because it's happening on your behalf using your name. So if they're out there annoying people, you don't want that to happen.
Or telling them to do their own work.
And
research, the client.
Or not following instructions. We have a form now. I actually have taken the form off of the website right now for this show because we have so many guests that are kind of in the hopper.
Right.
But normally that form is there to submit your information. And one of the things that it says is we have to have the email for the guest or the request will not even be considered. Now, a PR firm is almost always going to push back on that because they want us to go through them. Makes perfect sense. I've been there. I've done that. However, we work so far out that quite often they're not still working with that firm. So if I have no way to reach the guest, they're off the list because let's be honest, PR firms are very busy and they're not going to go through and say, we're no longer representing. No, they just, let it go. So, my point is if somebody says, this is what we request and or require, whether you're pitching yourself or having someone pitch for you, follow the rules. Now,
yes, I mean, exactly what you said. Yeah.
One of the things that we chatted about before the program started is what if somebody says, hey, we'd love to have you on our program. The fee is.
Yes.
What do you say when people do that? Now, granted, there are some
breath.
gigantomous programs that might do that, but for the most part, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, there are more and more programs that are doing that of all sizes. I had one of those pitch days I was referencing a couple weeks back, and I think from that day I had 2 responses of wanting a fee for the guests, and so I have questions that I ask and that I highly recommend that your audience asks if they get that kind of reply. Now this is happening more and more because it costs money to run a podcast.
We have expenses. I don't do this for free.
Yeah. I myself have a podcast. And so I know that, I have someone that edits it, things like that. So I understand that. And that's why I think that the place that most people are coming from when they're starting to ask their guests for a fee is just uninformed.
Right.
Because what happens when you take money to have someone be a guest on your show, no matter the amount, $10, $10,000, doesn't matter, is that just became an ad.
Right.
And there are rules.
There's
that
laws
go along with that. There's laws. There's laws, and there's also ethical issues that come along with that too. So, and the reason that I kind of bring that up is, or the thing I say about that is, so the first question I'll always ask is, how do you disclose this to your listeners? Because most of the time they don't. 9 times out of 10,
occurs to them that they
disclose.
should.
It doesn't occur to them that they should. They haven't thought about that. They just are like, oh, well, this is just help covering my expense, so everything's fine and dandy.
Yeah. What's the problem?
No. Yeah, the answer to that is no. And that is what we saw happen on social media, what we've seen happen in magazines before, where now on social media, it used to be that like these influencers, as we call them now, would promote a product, but people didn't know that it was paid for.
Right.
They just thought that they liked this product.
Oh, isn't it special that
out there.
little Sally likes my makeup?
Little Sally likes my makeup. Little do they know that little Sally's getting paid $100,000 plus a cut of the sales of this makeup. And so the consumer had no idea that this was technically an ad. It was something that they thought, was just like genuine that this person
they
liked.
bought
and
space.
So exactly. And so the FCC came down and said, no, like you need to put hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored or something on it so that people know that. So that was a huge change that happened. And the same thing is going to happen in podcasts. So you might as well be on top of it now and be making sure that you're going about it ethically. Because if I was on Deb's show, for instance, and she had charged me a fee, I paid her that, but she didn't disclose, like that ethically, this is now an ad. And so the people that are listening, they don't know that. They just think, oh, Deb likes to have Christina on. But that's not the case if there's, and that may be the case, but also if money is exchanged, it's a different level.
Yeah. Especially from my perspective, because now I'm saying nice things about you because I'm paid to say nice things about you.
Exactly. And so I think that most people just don't know that. And so sometimes when I write back, even I'll ask that question, how do you disclose? Because now this is an ad. I have had a few hosts write back and say, oh, I've just taken the fee off. Just straight, like me just
never mind.
Me just asking that made them see that it was, and I'm not being a jerk about it. I'm not anything like that. Like, I'm just like, okay, well, if you're going to be charging, like now I need to know, how do you disclose? Also, the other thing that I need to know, if you do disclose, because you have to disclose for me to even consider it. But beyond that, what are your statistics now?
Right. What's your demos?
Like, so how many downloads do you get? How much of this and that, because now this just became an ad.
You want a media kit from them.
Yeah, I want a media kit essentially, because now this became an ad. Now, I really typically at this point, I step out of it. It's not going to become a one of our guarantees, right? If it's paid for, that's not how we work.
That's
but
just
if
weird.
It's not how we work. It's not, for me, it's ethically, it doesn't jive. So it doesn't happen. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that I won't pass that info on to the client. And just let them know, hey, this show, you're charging for guests. They do disclose that this is a sponsored, episode or whatever. And the fee is $500. And here's all the info from them. You can make the decision. Here's the contact info. You can make the decision if you want to move forward with them, because there's nothing wrong with it being an ad.
Oh yeah.
If you make it clear, then it's an ad, and they're like, we have 100,000 downloads and we get in front of this many people. For some people, that's worth it. 100%. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I will absolutely give that opportunity to a client. So if I have the information there, but it's the issue for me is the people that don't disclose, that don't, they just want the money. Right. And again, they do that to cover their fees, but there are other ways to do that. You can ask for legit ads or sponsorships from companies.
Yeah, there's an ad that runs before this program.
There you go. Exactly. Like there are things that you can be doing to make money in your business. But I think that this is something that some people are saying you can be doing to monetize your podcast, like some gurus out there and things like that. But they're not talking about the legal and ethical implications of now charging for podcasts, which is going to make your listeners think differently about your podcast.
Right.
If I hear a podcast at the beginning, they say, hey, we're having so and so on the show. They're our actual sponsor for the show as well.
You're like,
all right, now we're gonna get we're gonna get into the program about da 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 da. I'm gonna look at that differently. I'm going to think about that interview differently. Now they're being upfront, they're being ethical. Like I know what's going on, but now I'm like, well, are they just saying that this is a really great program because they're getting paid to say it, or is it because they actually feel that way? So yes, I got off on my soapbox like I told you I would, but I do think that it's really, really important for people to realize that if someone asks you for a fee to be a guest on their show,
ask some questions.
You absolutely have the right to ask questions. And if you decide that, you know, they're doing what they can to make sure that their listeners know that this is a paid spot, and you decide that that's a good investment for
then
you,
that's fine.
go for it. Yes, yes, go for it. But it is not just it's not what this is. It's not earned media. It's not publicity at that point. It is advertising.
Right. You know, and it is, you know, just think about, as you were saying, the influencers or even an advertiser. I mean, you know, when I see Matthew McConaughey advertising Lincoln, I'm like, I'm pretty sure, you know, they probably gave him a car, but you know, really, you know, and
a big Lincoln man before this. Exactly.
You know, it's, and you do think differently because, you know, they're being paid not only to be nice, but not to say bad things. So, you know, that's the other thing is, you know, they might disagree. I mean, you know, back to the, you know, Betty Boop and, you know, the makeup, maybe it gave her hives, but, you know, because she's paid, she's not going to say that, you know, and so you just have to really watch those things. And again, as long as you've asked the questions and are happy with the answers, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But the second 100%. Somebody says, I'm not going to answer that, then danger, you know, go to one of the other million podcasts. Yeah,
exactly. So, there's other places to go. And that's so hard. And I know that's so frustrating to kind of hear sometimes because you just spent that time researching them. You just, you know, did all this stuff and it is what it is, but trust me, I'd rather be on the right side of that than be on the wrong side. And I don't know that this would happen, but at some point to have all those be pulled.
Oh yeah. Because, you never know, you know, when the government gets involved, who the heck knows? So,
And I don't know if it's going to come 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, but it will happen.
Right. Well, you know, one of the things that I really wanted to talk with you about, and we may end up going a little bit long to be able to do this, is you are very specific on who you work with. You know, and so tell us more about that. And then tell us why it's an underserved population of people who are doing podcasts.
Yes, so for a long time in podcasts, it was like the same 10 people going on each other's shows and talking about the same things. And so again, when I started this business, I knew that I wanted to do things differently. And what I really wanted to do was to get, you mentioned what I call traditionally underrepresented entrepreneurs voices out onto the podcast airwaves. And so when it comes to working with my clients, the bulk of majority fit into what I consider this category, which is women, LGBTQIA, or members of the BIPOC community, or sometimes they're of more than one of those communities as well. And I am just so passionate about those voices getting out there because they haven't been out there enough. People are afraid to share their voice sometimes, and for various reasons, and I completely understand that, but I want to help them amplify it because the more stories we can get out there, the more people feel like they can be empowered to do more things, you know, in their life. And I got to tell you, like one of my clients, he's this amazing sales coach, and he's an out gay, proud Puerto Rican man. And him telling his story about like why he left corporate for his discrimination that he faced, like in that environment. And that's why he went off on his own. He's done that interview. I mean, he recorded it. Like he was on a couple shows, like let's say a year ago, 9 months ago. He'll still get DMs about those episodes. People that write him, whether they relate to him in that, or they just didn't know that side of, you know, that world. And they kind of want to talk to him about it. And that is where the real powerful conversations get started. And that is from people being vulnerable enough to share their actual experiences. And so I think that this is part of why I love what I do, and getting people out there is like, just being able to have that kind of impact and what ripple that's going to have on more lives down the road.
Right. And I've talked with my guests about this, many times. I think so many times we as women, whether we're entrepreneurs, business leaders, whatever, we undervalue ourselves. And we're really bad about saying nobody wants to hear what we have to say, because maybe at 6 years old, we were told, honey, shh. Things like that. So that's where it's so important that we're getting women's voices, especially women in business, and as you said, and the underserved communities, because we are in business and we need to be supporting each other. My company name is Wise Women Communications. And I have people say, well, does that mean you don't work with men? I work with men. Their money is green also, but I like to work with women to give them kind of that extra support. So that's just it's so important to be able to bring a lot of these voices out who have such powerful stories that, are thinking, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. We do. We want to hear those stories.
We do. Other people do. I love that you said all that, because I 100% agree. I think that the more you hear other people's stories that have similar stories to you, too, like being a woman, maybe being a mom, being a business owner, these types of things, it gives you the confidence to go out and do that more yourself. And so I think that it's incredibly important. And another thing that particularly I hear from women, because I do have men clients as well, same. Is that, with them, they also worry, like, well, what if I say something wrong? What if, what if I stumble over my words? What if I do this or that? First of all, girl stumbles over her words.
I know.
Exactly. Like, I'm like, it's fine. But also my thing, and I truly, truly believe this, if you're trying to build your business, not doing publicity is the worst thing that you can do for your business. Stumbling over your word, telling the wrong story, something like that. Those things, they don't matter in the long run. People just want to hear you. You're human. You're going to, you're going to say, you're going to say, like, you're going to say these things, but not getting out in front of new people. I see it time and time again. Like, particularly women business owners, they're okay with doing the social media stuff because they're getting out in front of the same people that they already know, people that
they're friends,
are comfortable with, their friends, etc. But then when it comes to putting themselves out there in front of new people, that's where they really start to get, nervous or shut down and things like that. But the thing is, if that business is going to grow, girl, you got to get in front of new people.
Right.
So being on podcasts is a really great, easy way for you to get in front of new audiences. Right. And I guarantee to you that your first couple, you're going to stumble through. You're going to be nervous.
I still stumble. Oh my gosh.
Yes. I had to understand. This is funny. Like, I did my first Instagram live not too long ago. And I was sweating so bad before that Instagram live. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is how my clients, like, because like, I'm so used to being on podcast now. I don't have like that fear. I mean, I have fear. Like, I want to do a good job, but I don't have like the same, like, oh my God, like, whatever. Whereas when I was doing the Instagram, I was literally sweating. I was 5 minutes late. I couldn't figure out how to like get in, like all of this stuff. So I've been there. We've all been there. But once you do those first few, like, you're going to feel much more comfortable. And putting yourself out there, it's important. Other people want to hear what you have to say. And again, thinking of it from that service over self-promotion is going to help you in every part, the pitching, the actual interview, etc.
Right. And that's where, having done your research and gone, I can talk to Deb. She seems pretty friendly. She, or whoever it is.
I felt good about this one. I felt good about this one.
But I always remind people, I think it's Barbara Streisand who says she still throws up before every performance because she just gets so nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never, ever going to be perfect. And when it sounds perfect, it sounds so rehearsed, it's fake. So, it comes all the way back to what we were saying at the very start. There's that know, like, and trust. And when I have somebody on, I'm talking to somebody, or I stumble, all those things, it makes us human. And that's okay.
No one's listening and going, Did you hear her mess up that word?
Right.
They don't.
No.
If anything, they laugh with you when you laugh about it.
Right.
And then we just move on.
Yep.
Like it's, it's a real conversation.
Yeah. Cool. Well, oh my gosh, we could go on forever. See, and this is why I tell my guests I set a timer, because
I know,
we could go on forever, right?
Yes.
So tell us very specifically about how people reach you and the services that you provide.
Yeah. So at Publicity by Christina, which is my agency, we have a couple different services that we provide. We have our podcast pitch broker service, which is our white glove, highest level service where we do all the pitching for our clients. We love doing that, getting them out there. They're not having to spend the time doing the pitching. They just kind of what we call show up and shine. And then we also have a VIP day that's becoming quite popular, which is where what I do is I create all the assets for you to start pitching and then train up you and a member of your team to start doing the pitching on your behalf.
Okay.
And so that works really, really well. A lot of people might have someone on staff that they're like, okay, great, I want to have them take this over. And then we also have a $97 do-it-yourself podcast pitching 101 digital course training. That's for anyone, particularly people that are kind of maybe more just getting started, even on their entrepreneurial journey. Like they're kind of getting going. They are ready to get on podcasts and they're ready to kind of start do that pitch work themselves. So there's a couple ways that you can find me. One is we have a really fun interactive quiz at podcastpublicityquiz.com. And so that's a really cool way to kind of see what might be the next best step for you. I mentioned on here, but I also have a podcast called Your Podcast Publicist. So you can hear more of this deep voice on that as well if you want. You can find me on Instagram, which is at publicityxchristina. That's Christina with a CH. And then on my website, publicitybychristina.com. And again, that's with the X. I've got a checklist there, a podcast guest checklist.
I got that.
Deb got it. Deb's already on it. But yeah, we have multiple ways to get a hold of us and to work with us. And because this is coming out right before Black Friday, grab that guest checklist or follow me on Instagram. In order to find out about our Black Friday sale that we're doing, which is a product that we don't normally offer to the public. And it is where we create the custom pitch template. So you would be the one who's using it, doing the pitching yourself, like we talked about, researching things like that. But we're going to make sure you have that full template with some solid topic ideas there so that you're able to kind of kick off 2022 ready to go.
Great. I love it. I love it. Well, again, this is something that every single person who is listening, you have a story. People want to hear your story. And so it's a matter of finding the places for people to hear your story. And being a podcast guest is great. We didn't talk about any of the technical aspects, and there are, obviously some basics that you need, but this is not break the bank time either, folks. Many of the interviews that I do, people are using their phone and their earbuds. The people aren't tuning in to expect an Oscar-worthy presentation. They're tuning in to hear what you have to say. And so that's the thing, is figure out what it is that you have to say and then get out there and say it. And so I have been having a great time talking with Christina, and I want to give you the chance. Do you have any final words that you want to leave everyone with?
I mean, I said it in there before, but not doing publicity is the worst thing that could happen by you being a guest on podcasts or doing any kind of publicity work. I want you to challenge yourself, to put yourself out there in 2022. I'm setting the goal for all the people that are in my world, 22 podcasts in 2022. I want them to guest on. So get out there, do it. You can do it. And I guarantee a year afterwards, you're going to see a completely different business than what you had before.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And you can find all this information at publicity. I didn't say that right. publicityxchristina.com.
Yes, I thought it was so clever when I started my business. The publicity by Christina with an X. I was like,
we'll just put an X in there. Yeah, publicityxchristina.com. And so all that great information is there. we have to do this again, just because this has been so much fun. And maybe we will talk more about the specific details. Now you're a podcast guest. Now what? So, that would be great. So I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a fabulous time talking with Christina Lenkowski. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.